Welcome, everyone, to the Athearn Extra. We are broadcasting at it's episode 1.5. I want to thank you all for joining us. If you're joining us on the live stream, welcome aboard and happy Thursday night. We're one step closer to the gateway to the weekend, which is Friday. A lot of train stuff going on this time of year. You can probably tell the Athearn studio got a little bit festive, and we're going to talk more about that tonight. First, before we get started, let's go ahead and do a round of shout outs. Let's see who's joining us here tonight. We've got Greg from the great state of New York. We have Anthony just down the road in New Jersey. We've got Zach. We've got Eugene, Sid, Kyle, Terry. Mr. DG Model Works is in the house. We've got BN Green 1970. And we have KCG Rail Gilbert as well as Thomas. He's saying hi greens, but with a vegetable. I should probably eat more greens. So thank you for joining us. If you are catching us on our YouTube channel after the live, thank you for finding us. While you're there, go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We drop a video every week, specifically on Tuesdays, as well as Athearn Extra and anything else that we might dream up. So while you're over there, like I said, give us a like and subscribe and hit the notification bell. And that way you'll know when a new video drops. So we're going to talk a little bit about all kinds of some neat stuff. We're going to be talking about pretty much why this time of year is so special for us model railroaders. We're going to go a little bit down memory lane, but then we're also going to talk about the Athearn HO SW1500s. We've got some great prototype images to show with you with our special guest tonight. And we're also going to talk about the SD45T-2s and N-scale guys. Don't tune out yet, because at the end of the show, we're going to be talking about some new N-scale stuff, specifically the F89F TOFC flat cars that are now in the N-scale Genesis line, as well as the brand new Athearn N-scale 45-foot Fruehauf trailers. Brand new tooling, never been offered by Athearn before. So with that said, go ahead, get comfortable, put down the hobby knife, grab the eggnog of your choice, and let's get started. Let's do another round of shout outs. I see BNSF 9708 and Frederick, Kyle, Ronald, Rico, John's Railroad Videos, Hybrid Hobby, Mark, George, and Classic Model Trains. MTG Squad has just joined us. Jerry has just come on board all the way from Oklahoma. And we've got Kyle. So without further ado, let's get the extra rolling and talk about this time of year. And I want to bring on a special guest. You know this gentleman from Model Railroad News, as well as some other lives. We have joining us tonight, Mr. Tony Cook.
Hey, Jim, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Tony?
I can't believe that it's December 15th and we're this close to Christmas.
I can't believe it either. I don't know where the time goes. And I know with you, with your magazine schedule, it probably goes pretty quick, doesn't it?
It does. And yeah, this has been seems like a fast run from like Halloween to Thanksgiving to Christmas. Is just bang, bang, bang. They seem a week apart this year. So yeah.
It seems like that. Yeah,
that's
a good point.
Almost, yeah. Yeah.
You know,
how's your weather been up in Illinois? Have you had any snow yet?
We finally got snow today. What we would call in New England a dusting. It just barely put enough white stuff down on the roof. But how about you? How's it in Kansas City area?
I'm vacationing. I'm wintering down in the Houston area. I'm down in Texas, so 75 and sunny today.
Wow.
Can't complain. So yeah, no, I'm going to be going rail fanning in the next day or so. So although I did hear that Kansas City, we had some ice and cold, and it's supposed to be like 20 over the weekend. So yeah, wow.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't sound all that great after that, but the first part sounded amazing.
Indeed.
You know, one of the things I was thinking about, you know, when I was getting the Athearn Extra show together this afternoon. Now, of course, I am not home right now. I am in Illinois. And my home club is all the way back in Concord, New Hampshire. And I was thinking, you know, man, I'm missing out because this is probably the weekend that they're going to have the club Christmas party. And I know in New England, anyways, that's a big tradition. And we're going to throw this question out here to the audience. We'll see what your feedback is. Tony, how about yourself? Did you have a club that always had a Christmas themed gathering?
I never operated in clubs or did any of that kind of thing. So no, not really. I can remember having slideshows and things like prototype stuff with some of my dad's friends around the holidays and, watching train slides. But yeah, no, I've not been part of like a gift exchange or that kind of thing at a club.
It's a lot of fun. I've got some comments coming in now. George is coming on board. He says, we had our club Christmas party last Friday. That's cool. It's one of those things where I think we were talking before the show that we'd have like a white elephant gift exchange. Somebody would inevitably win the box of horn hook couplers or, plastic wheel sets or something like that. But it was a great time.
Yeah. Oh, the dog is barking. Yeah.
Bandits on to say hi.
As and he was so good the other night, all through the show with Train World with Ken Jr. But
that's right.
I don't know. He's in a mood tonight. But and those horn hook couplers, I always have people asking me where they can get those. So that's not always a white elephant gift. Every once in a while, there's someone in search of those. But yeah, that is a classic.
That's right too. Last night you were with Ken at Train World, and you guys had a Christmas kind of themed special as well, didn't you?
Went through like all the different Christmas releases and kind of explained the different, from G gauge down to Z, scale and different options for train sets. Just kind of a starter or beginner thing was on Train World TV. I think it was Tuesday night, but yeah, this week's running together. It seems like it was just last night, but yeah. So always fun stuff to talk about train stuff. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And I mean, for some reason, it seems like, this time of year in model trains and toy trains, they just kind of go hand in hand. I don't know how many people, if I'm traveling, inevitably, if they see my shirt, they want to know, hey, are you the same guys that makes the model trains? I had those as a kid, in Christmas of '63, my dad bought this set for me or what have you. And it's really interesting to see how a lot of us, myself included, got into the hobby just because of a simple Christmas gift or a Hanukkah gift. Tony, how about you? Do you have a Christmas origin story for us?
I always had, my dad was always into real railroading as a rail fan and model trains. So as far as like, I certainly had train sets at Christmas, but it was Christmas year round. We always had trains. So yes, I did. But yeah, that was not like sequestered to, it's Christmas and train time. Although, you mentioned that I had an editor from USA Today reached out to me recently. They were doing a story on what is that tie-in and how is it that trains are such a part of Christmas, whether it's putting it around the tree or the whole railroading thing seems to be tied into Christmas, like no other holiday. And he was asking about that too, and how that's such a tradition and such an origin, and not just train sets, but it seems like trains and everything at Christmas time are, and it really is. I had mentioned, my thought on it was as Christmas kind of developed and became what it is, for us now with all the trees and everything else, was about the same time as trains were taking hold. The early Lionel stuff of like 1900-ish and that kind of thing. So that they kind of went hand in hand, that it was a prime new item then. And trains were always so important as far as they brought everything. They brought probably your family members to visit for the holidays, that kind of thing. So, the prominence of it was that it really got tied into the whole kind of mystique of Christmas. But it was an interesting question to get asked, because as part of the article, he was also basically asking like, what are the popular scales and, what do people put around their trees, that kind of thing. But that question I thought was an interesting, exactly. How did trains get woven into Christmas the way it is? And it's like, yeah, they really are. Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing how that is. And I mean, even at work, we're doing a hybrid schedule now. So we go into the office a couple of times a week, and everybody will say, it's not a Christmas tree unless it's a train running underneath
Exactly,
it. That's
yeah.
The RC guys that fly model airplanes and stuff. They've all got a train under their tree. It's funny. For me, and I've said this before, a lot of people probably already know this. I got started at a very young age. I found a few pictures of Christmas past with model railroading. So I'll go ahead and share this here real quick. And Tony, I know you've seen these.
Oh, yeah.
These should bring back some memories for the everybody that's probably 40 years older. This is the old AHM GP18, the old Seaboard Coastline Bicentennial set. That was my first train set, and that's pretty much what lit the fire in me to get into model railroading. And the same set, I still have it. It's somehow survived both a house fire and childhood.
But, how about that? Wow, that's impressive. And that I hear that a lot. Again, the train set for Christmas, but again, that kind of age that you and I are both kind of in that neighborhood of. That's the other thing, is it was a bicentennial themed train set, which they were huge from everybody in the 70s. So, but yeah, that is a really common. Yeah. My first set was a bicentennial at Christmas. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of us, I guess if we were, say, Gen Xers, where we grew up in the 70s and 80s, these were pretty common. And a lot of my friends ended up with HO scale sets for Christmas at some point. Years later, Horizon in the early days. Now I'm looking at the date. The date on this is 12/25/98. These were cars that Horizon used to do many, many years ago. In fact, if you look at the Horizon logo, it's the original Horizon logo. It doesn't look anything at all like what we have now.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. They would send out a Christmas card every year to some of their dealers, and some of the employees would get these. And I happened to get one back in '98. And then last but not least, and Tony, I'm sure since railroading was, throughout the year for you, you got some stocking stuffers, and I'd be interested to know how many, like myself, got blue box models for stocking
stuffers.
Yeah, that's a. Yeah. And here's another one from my childhood that it still exists. I think I got this in maybe 1982, 1983.
Wow. That's a classic roundhouse.
Yeah,
little ore car. Yeah.
Yeah, wow. Little ore car. My early attempts at weathering by painting the trucks, it looks like a grimy black, and but it was kind of neat to wake up Christmas morning and see the stockings, and I always knew those boxes were just the right size, and of course there were other
you could always tell.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. You could always tell
what
was in there. So I'm going through the comments too. Anthony says, my first train set was a Marks and Tyco Chattanooga Choo Choo. I remember
that's another classic. Yeah.
And let's see, George, his was a New York Central Lionel set, I think is what he's trying to say there.
Yeah.
And here's another oldie, Mantua. First was a Mantua CP F7 set.
Wow.
Very cool. So, and here Richard has comments in here. My first train set was a Tyco Silver Streak. I remember those too. Those were the ones that were chrome, weren't they?
It was an Alco 430, chrome plated with a Red War bonnet, but a Union Pacific shield on its nose, and said Silver Streak on the side. And it was like 77 to about 1980 in Tyco's line, and was a gigantic seller. So I hear that one a lot, that guys will say, oh, that was my first train set. And it's like, it was gigantic. They made tons of them. Yeah.
Now, for those that are joining us that don't know, Tony is not only the editor of Model Railroad News, he's also the editor of a quarterly magazine called HO Collector. So if you really like to step back in time and learn more about some of these brands that we've just talked about, including Athearn, you do a lot of work on the older Athearn stuff. Check out his magazine. It's HO Collector. Tony, where's the best place for them to find that?
shop.whiteriverproductions.com. You can find that. And right now, the new digital app is available. It's in beta testing by White River. So you can download onto a smart device and get signed up at no cost. And you can sample your choice of publications. And like HO Collector, I think we have it back because it's starting its 7th year, which seems incredible. That doesn't seem possible, but it's all of the back issues on it, and a number of those are sold out. And so that's finally a place that I can point some folks and say, oh, if you're looking for that article, yeah, it's gone. And I don't even know if I still have my copy around or what I have. So yeah, you can look at it and see them that way again. But yeah, it's fun. I'm a co-editor of it with Tony Lucio, a buddy of mine from Kentucky. And then I'm also managing editor for Diesel Era, which is some of the prototype pictures we'll look at later are probably things I was working on from Kevin Udaly, who's one of the owners of White River Productions, looking at his slide collection. So trains of all kinds and all ages and varieties. Yeah.
Oh,
and I'm already working on a couple of neat Athearn things that I hadn't realized were hitting like 50-year anniversaries and such. So yeah, there's a couple of projects I'm already into research for this coming year's HO Collector. Oh wow, I hadn't realized that's 50 years old. That'd make a great article. So yeah, always Absolutely. A lot of Athearn.
Well, that's great. Yeah, we're getting a lot of comments up there. A lot of folks that are joining us, obviously, in this hobby. And it's funny how that all starts with sometimes a simple gift from a parent or grandparent or a friend. It's my brother is the reason why I got into it. He got me that set when I was just 3 years old.
Oh, wow.
So with that, though, let's talk about some of the new stuff that's coming out. And you and I have had this conversation many, many times before. I think we do have a certain nostalgia for some of the stuff that we grew up with. We always will. You have a soft spot for that. But today's HO scale and N scale model railroading equipment, freight cars, you name it, the level of detail, the level of fidelity, and how they operate and how they sound is just beyond our wildest dreams when we got our first train set. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I was saying that with somebody recently. I can't imagine showing myself as a little kid when I was doing Athearn blue box locomotives and putting the handrails on them and that to show them, something now that has the ground lights, all the lighting like the SDP40Fs and some of those pieces, and just some of the things that have been done, like the turbines and some of the other big models that are, the big boy in Athearn's line would just blow my mind to know that and the quality and the things they can do with the digital and sound.
It really is amazing. And we're going to kind of segue now and talk about some of the Athearn HO models. And the first one I want to talk about tonight, and I know, Tony, you sent me some pictures and you've also got some other pictures to share. We'll go through these here momentarily, but we're going to start with the SW1500. We have this open again for pre-orders. You have until December 30th to go ahead and pre-order that. But here's a sample of this was 2 runs ago. So this has actually been updated even since this picture was taken. But this gives you an idea if you're not familiar with the Athearn SW1500. Really nice little locomotive, a great detailed locomotive. And the nice thing about this is it doesn't matter if you have a small shelf layout like I have behind me or you have a large layout, you've always got room for an SW1500. Tony, I'm sure you've got at least 1 or 2 of these.
Yes. Yeah. I've got 1 or 2, I think. Yeah. It's a classic. That's 1991 is the debut for that in the blue box line. And the model that's sold today, you have to stop and think about that its origin was a blue box model. Because as you say, there's been so much done to it, and it's kind of escaping me now, but this latest run, I think, factors in a couple of more new features. Like in kind of the last update on it, added what sound came to it. And again, there's, I think, additional lighting features and such that are coming in this time. So it's a great little model. And, its tooling was dynamite back when it first came out. So, and this run has some wonderful road names.
Yeah, we've got some great roads in this lineup. And for those of you that don't know, there are some great features on this. Now, for the first time, this is the second time we're offering this particular model with sound. You're gonna have the choice of getting the standard DC model, or you can get the DCC with sound. Now that's a Soundtrack's Economy decoder. And something else that's been upgraded with these are going to have lit ground lights. That's never been done with this. Well, we did it in the former run as well, but before that, this was something that just couldn't be done. The other thing too is some of the older versions of these, they were great running locomotives, but the drivetrain was a little noisy. So product development went back and they did some refinements. They've upgraded it with a much better motor. And so now the drivetrain is not only stronger, but it's a lot quieter. So that's one of the big takeaways from this release. But let's talk about some of the road names that we have in this run. And a lot of this, Tony, I'm sure you hear a lot of guys asking about, I wish Athearn would make this or that. And we usually tell them, hey, go to our Athearn product suggestion email.
Right.
And this Rock Island paint scheme, this was one of the ones that.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah,
wow.
A lot of guys were asking for this one.
I mean, that's a great, the maroon with yellow is later 1960s, which is about when these were part of EMD's 1966 line, was the SW1500. And Rock had just kind of, they'd gone from that solid maroon with like the chevrons on the nose to this yellow ends. It kind of hit with the tall R, tall I, Rock Island spelling. And it looks sharp on these, especially with the gray trucks to accent it all. That is very nice.
It really is. And I mean, these are the three numbers that we're offering. Now, you sent me some pictures I'll share here quickly. This is a picture you sent my way. This is from May of 1967.
That's a Dick Kelb's picture. I don't know if it's in Texas. I think Mr. Kelb's passed away some years back, and Kevin Udaley has his collection. But as you can see, that literally looks like it was just taken out of the box. I mean, look how you can pick out the silver on the pilot handrail. The stepwell edges have got silver. I mean, that's a wow. That you don't realize, once they start getting dirtied up, that that was silver. But that's a wonderful shot. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it does look really nice. Coming up next, we've got number 942. This is not too far from me right now. This is Silvis, Illinois, 1974.
Yeah.
A little bit of weathering on that one.
And look at the Athearn model will have the correct Flexicoil trucks on both, but that one at some point ran into something, and it's got a slope journal on that front axle on the truck. So it's got a mix. So
zoom in on that for those that
kind of an interesting thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's you see that a lot on the Blombergs, and I assume the Flexicoils too, but yeah, that kind of catches my eye. And the roll up, the like tarp to go over its front intake there because of the cold weather.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see. We've got here's another shot. This is 942. This is a Harold Zier picture taken in June of 1972. Not sure of the location, but
no, I didn't have a location on it, and I noticed that one's got the old AAR switcher trucks on it. So I think the three road numbers that Athearn's doing in the era that they're doing them, they'll all be Flexicoil, but that's kind of the older look there for that. It seems like every time you look at these models, these EMD units that you've seen over and over again, yeah, I know what that looks like. I can picture it in my head. There's always something when I'm doing some of this research and these, things come out and I'm picking slides out that I think, wow, I never really noticed that before. And this round on the SW1500 pictures, the thing that keeps catching my eye on the ones that I dug up recently is the location there of the crank brake. See, it's between rock and island on the hood.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think if you would have asked me, I would have told you it was up there towards the front of the nose, but that's the sand filler, and the sand storage is below that. In fact, that round circle, I think, is for cleaning out the sand storage. You could take that off if you had to, for sanding the trucks. So obviously the brake couldn't sit there. And so it's like, yeah, I guess it is, but I never paid that much attention before. But it's one of those, now I see it every glance. I look at an SW, like, oh, yep, there's that crank brake that sits back there. I had never really paid attention to it before.
Yeah, and it's interesting how their logo, the Rock Island logo, just fit in that space. Really cool. So we're doing some Union Pacific ones. Now that Union Pacific that I showed you earlier, that's a more modern day switcher, UPY switcher. But we wanted to do some earlier switchers. These are not super early. This is like 1990s era, so you still have the red sill era. We're offering a few road numbers here. Here we've got 1011, 1014, and 1023, and you found some really good examples of these in their natural habitat. Here's one, like you said earlier, it's like they just took it out of the box.
And yeah, this is Mount Vernon, Illinois, and I know that Chrome Crankshaft or Paducah, there's a couple people down there, but I don't think UP would have used them for that. But that literally looks like it was just rolled out of the paint shop, and with the Mount Vernon kind of makes me think, well, wow, did they do something for them? And I'm trying to remember now too. I remember looking these up. This is running in March's Model Railroad News. There's a couple page profile with pictures of all the road names you're doing and then backgrounds on them. And of course, now it's escaping me, but I can't remember if these are like, I don't know that they're originally Union Pacific. I think these may be like Katy or Western Pacific or Mopac, that these are all repaints, I believe. And I don't know, is it mentioned in the...
These are all...
Yeah,
these were all inherited. These were never purchased. The group that we're doing were never purchased. They ended up inheriting all these through their mergers and secondhand acquisitions. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
Which seems odd. You would have think, a big road like Union Pacific certainly had SW50. I think that's why I now remember that fact. As I was looking at it, I'm like, yeah, because your press release said they never bought him. I'm like, oh wow, I'd have missed that on Final Jeopardy. It's like, wow, the UP never. I need to look at that, but. Yeah, that is interesting.
It is interesting that a class 1 that size didn't have any, but I thought that was a really cool picture. The other thing that I tell folks on Train Tuesday and stuff is, really get to know your prototype if you really want to be accurate. And the thing that caught my eye in this picture is if I zoom in, check out what's behind here. It's a Missouri Pacific boxcar back there. This is 97, and we still have a Missouri Pacific, because Missouri Pacific was purchased, I believe, in what, 82?
82s that fold in of both Western Pacific on the west and Mopac on the east and south of UP. And Mopac was actually bigger than UP mileage-wise and such, so it was almost the tail wagging the dog there. But yeah. And UP had also some of the motive power changes at the time in 82. They had just taken back like some of the Jeep 40s. They helped finance for Rock Island. So as far as motive power, to me, kind of that classic UP era of really, true pure UP ends there about 1980 as the Rock Island bankruptcy units come back into the fold. And then within a couple of years, they've got the whole flood of Western Pacific and Mopac power. So UP's roster just completely changes and explodes sometime there in the early 80s.
Here's one, 2007 by Jim Boyd.
Yeah.
Showing a little bit of wear there.
I was trying to guess where that was, because you can see a couple, looks like that Wisconsin and Southern private passenger cars in the background. I guess it might be somewhere, like either Silver, like Chicago area or something, but yeah, nice rough looking model there with some of the red sill is scuffed up, but nice looking piece. And I think it's looks like the exhauster cap there, so it may not even be in service.
Oh yeah, that's right. So moving on to the Southern Pacific, and Tony, this is a railroad a lot of people ask for. Every month we get so much demand for Southern Pacific. We have some folks, I'm sure, in the Canadian areas and on the East Coast and even in the South are like, man, why do you do so much Southern Pacific? Well, there's a demand for it. I'm not sure if it's more folks that are just infatuated with something that's gone now, or they grew up with it, or why, but Southern Pacific is probably one of our most requested lines. So we had to do these, but we did something a little different, and we offered it, in the original paint scheme. We've got 3 numbers in the gray and scarlet, and we've also got the merger that never happened. We'll show that in a second, but here's some great shot. This is a beautiful shot.
Isn't that a wonderful shot? Yeah, when I found it, like, oh my, yeah, that's October 1970, and man, that's a detailer's dream shot there to see down on, to know what's on the cab roof, and to get to see the walkways that And you don't always see that, and you start looking at things like, well, I'm pretty sure they probably are gray, or they're this or they're that. But then you start wondering and debating, looking at the pilot steps. It's like, well, they're red, it looks like. What's the So yeah, that's an awesome shot to see all the detail there. Yeah, and the ACI plate next to the Southern Pacific name there on the hood.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I think your model has that MU on the stand next to
Yes.
the drop step is included in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I mean, really clean. And I think, the thing I really like about SP from this era is look at the lighting
yeah,
setup here.
yeah. If the EMD salesman like got a perk, this guy went to Hawaii or Disneyland every year that he sold stuff to Southern Pacific, because they're like, wow, look at that. What's his name over there? Sold him every light feature we got. So, I mean, how SP didn't end up with like T-tops or a vinyl roof as well on some of these, I don't know. But yeah, there was no light package they didn't say yes to. And then it's funny within, by the 90s, they're capping and blanking them all out. And it's like,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the Athearn model is that's something that I don't think that was present back in the blue box days, because there were a couple
No.
early models that had SP lights like the tunnel motor, but this has been a revision, I think, that has been done in the last however many years with like ready to roll.
Here's a nice shot that you found for us, the back part. And again, there's all those lighting features, all those lighting options that SP is known for.
Yep. And I want to say, doesn't the 1500 now have windshield wipers too? See the 2 windshield wipers there? I think your model.
I think we've started to do that
Yeah.
with this model. Yeah.
Which, again, for its price point and such, this is an amazingly appointed model with the ground lights, like the wipers, the road accurate details, all that. It's very, very nice. Yeah.
Another nice clean shot. This was in '79. Looks like in Dolores, California.
I would say that, yeah, it's got to be a repaint. But anytime I find a really clean SP shot, I always have to pull and use it, because that's another thing most of the SP fan, and I agree, every time I saw them, they were filthy, that you almost never could read Southern Pacific on the long hood, that the white had faded away to a weird like silver or something, and they were so dirty. So anytime I see a clean SP shot, it's like, oh, look at that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Such a cool shot. Now here's the one, and I remember this. I remember reading full scale magazines at the time about this, and I always thought this was a sharp paint scheme. We had to do this as well, and of course, Janik is a big fan of the SPSF. Honestly, I kind of wish we had seen it happen.
It's a love-hate that you talk to rail fans, and yeah, they either think it's cool and it was neat, or that Kodachrome scheme, like, oh my gosh, I'm glad that never happened. But that it's very interesting to see that laid on a switcher like that.
Right.
And I think there's an SP Motive Power website that lists the different units that got Kodachrome, if you're ever looking to find what was what. But it's such it is a neat scheme. I always like the red background, white numeral number boards.
Yes.
Seems so off-putting because we're so used to it's black and white. You can have white with black or black with white, and then here are these like red with white numbers are crazy looking. But yeah, that's an awesome switcher. So in that group, there's 4 potential SP numbers with 3 bloody nose and then 1 Kodachrome. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, if you're doing, 1986 and beyond, the Kodachrome is perfect. So for you guys out there that maybe have a shelf layout and you're on the fence, it's like, well, I'd like to do the 80s, but I don't need more than 1 locomotive. Well, here you go. This is it's a great example. And, I always feel so bad about the SPSF because there was so much planning involved. They went through all this work to come up with a paint system. And if you look carefully on the long hood of the SW, you can tell it's an SP unit because of the placement of the SP.
Right.
The idea was once the merger had gone through, the SF would be placed in front of that. And likewise, the Santa Fe did the same thing. They put their placement of SF towards the front, and so they could add the SP later. And all that planning and all that work, and it just never happened.
And it is interesting when you think about it, because at the time, I can't remember if this was by that point in the 80s. I think it was still the Interstate Commerce Commission. I don't know that the Surface Transportation Board was making those judgments, but I've read that before, that literally up to this point, they never met a merger they didn't like, that all of them, regardless, somehow got pushed through. So again, this was, oh, well, yeah, we're not going to have any problem with that. It'll happen. In fact, I think that like the management between Santa Fe SP, some of those guys end up exiting afterwards. I just read or saw a thing on that, kind of refreshing my history on it. And yeah, it was just kind of a shock to them of, wow, no, what do you mean no? What did they say? They said no. It's like, hang on. Yeah, wow.
Yeah, it's just so kind of an interesting point in history. Now, here's another one, Tony. We had a lot of guys ask for original Southern, and this. Some people call this the tuxedo paint scheme. It really is a sharp paint scheme.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, and the Southeast Roads is one that I don't. In general, you don't see enough service for in models as big and as important as they are. When you think again of the Santa Fe's, the Rio Grandes, the SPs, the UPs out west, and then actually the Eastern Roads, the Conrails, and those kind of folks always get coverage. But boy, if there's one area of the U.S. that occasionally gets overlooked, yeah, it is the Southeastern Roads. And yeah, these Southerns are a neat group.
Absolutely. And this was one we had a lot of demand for. And so we've got 3 different road numbers for that. We've also, and I know later, after I get done these slides, you've got some of the Minneapolis, Northfield, and Southern Railway. This is a cool little short line. We're going to do 2 road numbers for the MNS.
All of them.
Yeah,
that's
all of them.
The whole roster. Yeah, everyone.
The whole thing.
Yeah. It seems like every time you guys have a release, there's always some railroad that, yeah, I was aware of that. If you just said to me, would you buy that? It's like, oh, probably not. It doesn't really mean that much to me. And then there'll be an announcement like this, and I look at the cool snowplow with the orange and black stripes, those odd like Hancock whistles, and then start looking into the history again. Like, yeah, I know Minneapolis, Northfield, and Southern, and suddenly it's like, okay, this is now my must-have out of this month's announcements. Is I got to have one of those little switchers. That's really cool. And that's I think it's one of the funnest things about the hobby. And I'm sure you're that way too. There's stuff that you can go into a hobby shop. You can go online looking for stuff, or like this, announcements come out. And if somebody said, okay, Athearn's doing this, this, and this. Okay, that does it. And then say like, wait a minute, let me look at that Minneapolis, Northfield, and Southern again. That's kind of cool, and
right. And I think a lot of folks do that.
Yeah. Certainly collectors. I mean, collectors like myself, something will hit me, and it's like, yeah, that's nothing that I would ever consider operating or modeling, is like, that's my layout. But yeah, I want to have one on the shelf because it's neat. Yeah.
Now the Frisco is another railroad that is big fan base. The jokingly, I actually know some guys that work for the Class 1s, and was talking to a guy out of Galesburg one time, and he says, you know what BNSF stands for, right? And I said, yeah, Burlington Northern Santa Fe. And he's like, wrong. Okay, what does it stand for? Been nothing since Frisco.
Yeah.
Obviously, he was a former Frisco employee. But
I've heard that over the years, and yeah, first couple times I heard it, I really kind of like, what? You start laughing, like, what? Yeah. But yeah, Frisco's a fun road.
Oh yeah, just a neat, another one of those roads where it just looks right. Everything about their logo, their paint scheme, everything just looks right, and they really look good on these SW1500s. We're offering 3 different road numbers for this one, and you sent some really cool pictures.
I found one shot, and I hope you've got it here because I don't know if I have it handy. But I found that one shot of them like switching a grain elevator or something with 40-foot boxcars, a pair of them. And it to me was literally like, this could be a catalog cover, a diorama. It's like, wow, this makes you want to, like, I want to build that. I want to get those 2 switchers in a handful of 40-foot boxcars and make that scene. And sometimes pictures will do that.
Oh yeah, I think that is in here. We'll have to check. But here's this was in Memphis,
Hmm.
Memphis, Tennessee. I don't have a date, but man, those looked sharp.
You know, it's interesting because Frisco, they were St. Louis, San Francisco, and they never got anywhere close to California.
Yeah.
That they make it down into like Texas, Oklahoma, but in the other direction, yeah, like Memphis and down to, I want to say Frisco touches that top like panhandle of Florida. So like when
Hmm.
BN took them over, suddenly the Burlington Northern could be sitting next to palm trees in Florida, and it's like, wow, that doesn't seem right at all. But
No,
yeah,
it doesn't. It really doesn't. Here's a nice shot, 330. This was also in Memphis, 1974.
I love that one because of the box cars behind it. We got the classic ship it
Uh-huh.
on the Frisco. It's like,
Yeah,
oh, that again, that's a neat, looks like a setup shot.
it does. Yeah, you've got two there right behind it, and
Yeah,
really nice setting. There we go.
that's
That's what you're
it.
talking about.
I mean, look at that picture and tell me that it's like, oh, I'm going to the hardware or to the hobby shop tomorrow and then the hardware store and I'm going to build that. I don't, that to me just, yeah. And both the switchers pointed forward there with the row of cars and the cars of these old weathered box cars. It's like,
Hmm.
wow, that's Springfield, Missouri area, 1979.
1979, and we can zoom in. The CE and I, it looks like it's still got its
Hmm.
roof walk.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it's
I
got the
just
wheel.
noticed that.
And there's the wheel dot. So, and there's a
Yep.
stacked cot stencil on that Mopac box car. But yeah, you talk about some relic 40 footers by that time. But
Yeah,
yeah, they
even the
still have. Yeah.
older doors. I mean, those aren't.
Hmm.
Those are the original doors. I think the Youngstown doors were that size. I mean, that's classic.
Yeah.
Americana, if you will. And like you said, 1979, 40-foot
Hmm.
boxcars. You got the Ralston Purina logo up on that grain elevator. That is just
It's just an
really
awesome.
cool.
Yeah. That's an awesome, awesome picture. Yeah.
Here's another one. I thought this was kind of neat
Yeah.
up on the turntable.
And this is a fixture that I can remember a few railroads as a kid seeing them here and there in Illinois and Missouri. They had them, but diesels you didn't turn like steam locomotives, so it's really something now. It's like go find me a turntable. It's like, oh yeah, not that I can think of, but so many yards had them at the time. I don't think I have a location on this. It's 1972.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm not sure, but again, I remember that from like St. Louis, Peoria, Kansas City, that various places, there would be a turntable sitting around, and that's a neat railroad looking or model railroad looking scene to see those two switchers parked on a turntable like that.
Now I know you've got some additional pictures of the SW1500s. I'll let you share
Let's
those.
see here. And these are some that I was up at, I'm down here in Texas, and the Udalys, did I get that? I've got it shared
There we
there.
go. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
the Udalys are in Palestine, Texas, and I was up working on some of Kevin's slides, and again was intrigued by these. Like, well, let me take another look and see if I can find some additional stuff. And I found more shots of the two Minneapolis, Northfield, and Southerns. I really like I hadn't noticed before on the drop step that they put the road number. That's kind of neat. And
Mm.
then I hadn't caught, but above the MU, it looks like there's a beacon was on, and you'll see these on some of the others. This shot's
Huh.
Golden Valley, Minnesota, 1973. And there, that shows that neat snow plow, which again is one of those I've seen pictures of these before, but somehow I never recorded in my head that they had this like tiger stripe, SP looking snow plow thing on them. I love had thrown up some coolant there, it looks like.
Some weathering detail.
Yeah. And here's a neat shot. This is what I think first caught my eye on the crank brakes. This again
Hmm.
is a 1976 in Golden Valley, and the doors popped open. You see the fire extinguisher inside, and yep, sure enough, there it
Sure
is.
enough.
Yeah, it had a cool detail. And again, these I didn't realize they had these. I think I know these and you would too from out east. Hancock whistles. I think in New Haven.
Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, it's curious. Like wow, I didn't realize those had that feature. And I like the little caboose. There's a
Oh,
handful of rolling stock pictures that I was going to send to Janik and your guys of like, wow, with doing some of these, like, I don't know if you've ever done your bay window caboose in Minneapolis, Northfield, and Southern, but that's kind of cool to see that.
that is
And
cool.
this is 83, and they've put these like spark arrestor attachments to them, which is an easy detail that you can find. And this has got an all-weather cab added to it as well. And this is one of the road has some wild motive power. Google them and look them up, and you'll see like some old Baldwin units. They had some of those big center cab, like transfer or switching type units. And this is one of their SD38s back there. And there's the beacon. What caught my eye on that they had a beacon on there because it's lit up on that one. And yeah, 36, 37. You guys are doing the whole roster. Here's the other one, 37. Yep. And then their other power, that's an old like 1200 or SW7. And this is what I was going to send to Janet because I thought this caught my eye. It makes me think of that. I think it was introduced in the mid 70s, the Steamer, a 50-foot sliding door box car in the blue box line. And it's like, wow, look at that. But here's one of their cars there. And then this is way out around Albuquerque, 1978. Again, being in the area they did a lot of lumber business. And this is an all-door car. I think this is the Evans all-door example. And then I pulled this because, again, you know, you see some of these announcements and they're roads you kind of know of. And this is something I found online. But as you can see, there's Minneapolis, St. Paul. So we're looking at, you know, nothing more than slivers of the states there. And that's all the road was. It starts out, the guy had race horses, I read, and that's why it's called the Dan Patch line. That was the name of like his thoroughbred racehorse. Okay. And much like the Illinois Terminal, this was to be an interurban that was going to connect the Twin Cities with like Dubuque or something. That never panned out, and I think he went bankrupt like maybe around the Depression or something, and it reforms. It's a regular railroad, stays till the early 80s, and Soo Line picks it up, and then after their acquisition of Milwaukee in 86, it officially goes into Soo Line. But really, really neat history to it. It's always fun, those roads that were interurbans, to see, you know, when they go regular, like the IT is a real fan favorite type railroad. But yeah, look up Minneapolis, Northfield, and Southern sometime, and it is a neat, you know, it's a road to explore. Which again is when I see some of these announcements and think, yeah, I'm interested in that, and then I want to know more about the railroad too. Like, yeah, I'm going to buy that switcher, but now like, is there a book on the railroad, or what more can I learn, and what else did they have, and that, yeah, you kind of end up down this. I've been down the Minneapolis, Northfield, and Southern rabbit hole lately. Yeah.
It's an interesting line, and it's one of those lines where, you know, even if you just have a small spare room, if you wanted to, you could do a really nice small layout depicting that. And these little SWs are going to be perfect for operating a layout like that. Now, for you guys that are catching this, if you haven't seen it yet, you can go over to our YouTube channel. We have Train Tuesday where we talk about these in detail. You have until Friday, December 30th to place your pre-order on these, and they'll be out next winter about this time. Now, the next locomotive we're going to talk about is the SD45T-2, and we're going to show what Athearn is going to produce. And then, Tony, you've got some great pictures that you're going to share.
Yeah, I found some additional ones there too. As I started looking at these, and I pulled for you at the time because SP comes to mind. That's why it exists. That this was SP asking EMD, you know, because they'd done the elephant ears on the SD45s and things. They wanted that lower air intake because of overheating in like snow sheds and tunnels. So their purchase of 45-2s only come this way, and this comes first. I don't know why I found this out a handful of years ago. I always thought the SD40T-2 delivered first, but this actually is the first. And the quick, easy spot on them are those three panels above the air intake and below the radiator section. You can see the three warning labels back there. If there's three, it's a 45T-2. If there's two of those panels, it's a 40T-2. So that's kind of
spotting feature,
quick at the glance type thing. But these were immensely popular, both the SD40T and the 45T. And again, I think this is one of the reasons you talked about that mystique of the Southern Pacific. And again, tunnel motors. I mean, you start talking to, guys that grew up like Harry Wong over at Railroad Model Craftsman will talk about, seeing the tunnel motors in that. And yeah, and I'm tunnel motors to the, Rio Grande. That's one of the things that always drew me to that road, that they're just so cool. And this model has always been, one of it's not a Genesis model, but
Right.
I've always felt like, man, it is all but. I mean, this is the, whatever Ford Ranger Expedition Platinum Edition. It's like, man, that's almost a Lincoln Mark LT pickup truck. It's like, it's almost, but it's not. And I think of this as that, like, yeah, it's almost a Lincoln, but it's still a Ford. But
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, a lot of features have gone into this. And for this run, now this picture that I'm sharing with you guys right now, this is from a former run of a couple of years ago, I believe 2016. And we've done some more refinements to the locomotive since then even. I want to show you folks what we're going to be offering in paint schemes. And here we go again with the Red Sill era Union Pacific. Now, of course, these are repaints. We're offering 3 different roads for the UP. And this is about late 90s. And then, of course, there's the Southern Pacific and its original bloody nose paint scheme. Really cool. And probably, again, Tony, probably the most requested road for this locomotive.
Wow. Oh, yeah. Easily, yeah.
And the thing that always caught my eye when I started reading about these, growing up in New England, the roads of the West were just these monster railroads that I could only dream about at the time. And I always thought it was interesting to see SP going to EMD and saying, hey, we want a better visibility for our engineers. Oops, I'm going to go back again. I zoomed out of it. They came out with this L window.
Yeah.
And it didn't really last long. It was mainly a product of the 1970s, but I think by the mid 80s, the maintenance crews hated these things, and they made it so that it was 2 separate pieces of glass by then. But at the time, I just thought this was the coolest thing.
And it's a great idea. I think they're on the regular. I think they first appear on some of the late SD45s, and then they're on some of these. And I'm thinking, like maybe Illinois Central somehow got a few on some SD40s, but in general, this is almost an SP feature to have this L-shaped window. And yeah, it's awesome for visibility, but it's almost like a car that gets a rock chip and, oh, you also got to replace the driver's side window. What?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I can see why it suddenly was, oh, no. And they patched them out, or, it modified them pretty quickly. But yeah, and that as delivered with all the light package on the nose and that big L-shaped window is an awesome looking front end for those.
Definitely. So for SP fans of 1970s, we've got 3 different road numbers for you, complete with that L-shaped window. We've also got, and I was talking about this on Train Tuesday the other day, a lot of UP modelers, they fall within 1 of 2 categories, either the yellow sill, which we would consider the modern era, or the red sill, which was pre-2006. And I found the same thing with Southern Pacific too. There's this era with the Gothic font, and then there's the speed lettering of the 1990s.
Yeah.
And it's really can be, a lot of guys take a hard line on this. They're either for the speed lettering or they're not. A lot of diehard early modelers of the Southern Pacific like the original Gothic paint scheme. At the risk of getting something thrown at me, I really do like the speed lettering.
Yeah, and I agree. Yeah, and again, I mentioned Tail Wagging the Dog with Mopac being bigger than UP. It's October 88 is when Phil Anschutz with Rio Grande Industries, the Denver and Rio Grande, takes over the SP. And I mean, it's like, yeah, that's the flying Rio Grande. If you had that font on your computer, but type Southern Pacific instead of Rio Grande. And so, yeah, I can see if you're an SP fan I'm not thrilled with having to have that Rio Grande look, but it is a sleek. And in that era too, seemed to get the big SP on the nose in the sans serif look, whereas older was either smaller, the Railroad Roman or whatever, the Gothic look, it isn't as bold on the nose, or they just had a road number on the nose.
Right.
So, and I remember there was somehow or another for a road that never seemed to take care of itself. That's like 88, late 88 is when Anschutz buys the SP. And then the UP thing is 95 or 6.
90,
and yet there's tons of stuff painted in this speed letter. Although SP was also going through a lot of power rebuilding and picking up secondhand units. And boy, you talk about loaded with detail. This one, we've capped the upper lights, the nose light is gone, the L-shaped window's gone. I was trying to guess what that box there on the angled side of the cab, I'm trying to think what that is now.
Yeah, I am not as versed with the SP as some folks, so I don't have an answer for you there. But the biggest thing that is, you know, really defines an era is, you know, we go from the 70s with all of those lighting features to the 90s, and the ditch lights kind of put an end to that. You can see, like you said, everything's plated over. And the other thing, the L window is gone. If you look carefully, though, what they ended up doing is just using the same kind of window on the engineer side. They plated over the cab, and they made it so that you could use the same window. Didn't matter if it was mounted horizontally or vertically. So that was probably I'm sure the maintenance guys probably loved that route versus that big L window. Now we're offering this speed lettering also in 3 road numbers. So for you guys that are modeling the 90s, these are perfect for that. And we still have more Southern Pacific goodness. We'll get to that in a minute. Here's one that probably weren't expecting.
No, this again is why I was digging in slides after I'd already sent you some of the images on them. Was like, wait a minute, I think I did find one of these, but suddenly, yeah, that sent me down a rabbit hole of, wait, I've got to look into this a little bit closer. Yeah, I knew they did, but how and why? You know, this is an interesting piece of how these get to the CN. Yeah,
right. And we have had a lot of folks ask on our social media. These units had the DMIR underneath the cab number, right about where I'm pointing now. These are initial artwork drawings. These are not exactly what's going to be in production. I have talked to product development. They said they will include those letters in there so that you can have that on the cab. That was one of the biggest things that a lot of folks had noticed was missing in the artwork. So we want to thank everybody for, letting us know, and those will be included. We have 405 and 406 and 408. So you can build a fleet pretty easily with these. And again, it's one that, I bet you we'll see in a minute how successful you were, Tony, but I'd like to see some prototype images of that.
I found it and found where they came from, and I think we hit that in the next road name. But yeah, again, it's, you forget on some of these when they get second and third hand that, oh wow, a CN wet noodle 45T-2. Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
that's a very cool look. Yeah.
Back to SP, we've got the cotton belt. Now this one, really excited about 3 different road numbers, but these are all primed for grime. So remember, Tony, you were saying earlier how hard it was to find some good, clean pictures of a Southern Pacific unit and how that Southern Pacific white would turn almost into a silver.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to have here with these cotton belts. These guys have seen some hard service. These are mid-1980s models. And yeah, the cotton belt is faded out. The gray has kind of gotten chalky in the summer sun. And of course, even the scarlet red is muted down. So for you guys that like the prime for grime, especially in the 1980s, we're offering 3 different road numbers here for the cotton belt. And that's another railroad that the more you study it, the more interesting it becomes.
And yeah, there was a ton of, back in the early days, there was a number of subsidiaries to SP, but then in more modern times, the SSW, St. Louis Southwestern Cotton Belt, was around and sublettered on locomotives really, I mean, till the end, they never, there's no speed letter version of Cotton Belt that it's
Right.
folded in by the Rio Grande ownership era. But yeah, these were, Cotton Belt was in the minority position on most of the buys of power, but they did have 45T-2s as well. And I always like these prime for grime units. And I know I've said this before, I end up, because again, my aim a lot of times is just collecting. So you're like, well, why would I want one of these? Because I'm not going to weather it, or I'm not going to do this or that to it. But it is such a cool item as a collectible because of the faded printing on it. The colors are all muted. So to set one of those next to, another clean new version, that I end up buying more prime for grime than I would have ever thought I do. And they're always fun to see what the designers have come up with, or their aim on making these. That they're really, it's a fun group of models.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking about doing some customization, um, we're going to be offering these in undecorated as well. But here's another one, and I know you had shared some pictures of these with me before the show. So if you guys are interested in the Bessemer Lake Erie, stay tuned. We're offering 3 different road numbers with Bessemer Lake Erie, and I like that Milwaukee Road-esque paint scheme they have.
And it's a neat road. I've got their map that I'll show when we look at the prototype stuff. Because as I was looking at and pulling some of these slides, and Kevin Daly and I were talking on these roads, and I said, it's one of the iron ore roads. He said, well, it is, but it's not, like Duluth, Mesabi, and it's not in like that Minnesota. It's not there on the great. It's on the other side. It's like, oh yeah. So it's almost like, and I likened it to, well, it's narrow gauge, but it's not real narrow gauge like in Colorado. It's like the East Broad Top. So it's like, yeah, it is, but it's not the same as Durango and Silverton, or Colorado and Southern. But that's how I saw it. But yeah, again, that led me into, well, I got to do a little more Bessemer research on stuff, because and again, didn't realize, and out of this group, I think they owned, it's like 900 to 910 or 901 to 910, and half of them are ex Cotton Belt, which again, considering Cotton Belt was in the minority ownership, it's interesting that somehow, if you looked at those numbers, you think it was a 50-50 split, that half their units were SP and half were Cotton Belt, and that's is not typical of what the mix was on SP's roster.
Yeah, that's true. Speaking of allowing you to customize, we are offering the SD45T-2 as an undecorated model. It's based on the Southern Pacific prototype, as you can see, because it's going to have the L window. It's going to have the SP lighting group. But as we've seen tonight, these guys could have wandered anywhere. And even if you just do a Proto Lance or a freelance road, maybe you've got a home road that's your own and you'd like to have some unique power, I'm sure you can write in your narrative of your layout a justification for one of these. Undecorated, we get requests for it, not as much as we used to, but we still have some hardcore guys out there that know how to use an airbrush. So we wanted to go ahead and offer this to them, and it'll be interesting what we start seeing guys paint these up in.
I was surprised by it when I saw that in the announcement sheet, because again, you're doing regular SP, you're doing speed loader SP, you're doing Cotton Belt. I mean, you're hitting so many of the things, like, well, yeah, what would you paint it? But then as you say, it's like, well, that's the whole point. Yeah, what would you paint it? That it could be anything, that you're talking more secondhand. Because as I first looked at it, I thought, well, they do so many of them already. Why would you want to go to the trouble of painting that SP? And it's like, oh yeah, no, it might be more to have it as a secondhand piece. Is this something that, because I know this is going to get asked, if it hasn't already popped in the conversation, are we going to see more of this? I know Undex come and go from time to time. I mean, is this kind of a we're going to see, or do you know what the thought process was behind how this got included in this group? Because like, I think on the switchers and the other, there's no Undex. So it's not like we're doing that now.
Right. Yeah. It's one of those things we're kind of testing the waters. We've had a lot of feedback from fellow modelers that say, you know what, I wish you'd do this model in undecorated. And we see that with just about every model that we release. We're trying to do it with some of our bigger locomotives that are more common. And we figured, you know what, let's try this with the SD45T-2 and see what happens. And, just based on some of the comments I'm reading now, there's a lot of guys that are like, oh yeah, I'll get an undeck and I'll justify it for this road or what have you. That's the beauty of model railroading, is we can make it as prototypically correct as we like. And you can always, there's a prototype for everything. So there's no reason why you wouldn't want to paint this into your home road.
But that's awesome. No, that was one of the kind of the fun. Oh, wow, look at that. In fact, I think I generally only put in Model Railroad News the illustrations, for the various paint differences. And I think that one I threw in a big picture of the undeck just as and by the way, there's an undeck coming out. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We'll see how this does. If our guys with the airbrushes out there, go ahead and order them. If it looks like we're starting to see some inroads with the custom paint crowd, we'll probably offer more locomotives and even rolling stock in undecorated. So we'll kind of see. We'll see what happens. We did offer the, I believe it was the MP15s about a year ago. We offered those as undecorateds. They did fairly well. So we'll see what happens.
That's interesting. No. And it's fun. And again, that's when I get those emails saying, how do I request? Or I will always get that, hey, would you say something to, as if they're going to go, oh, well, because it's like, yeah, we're going to do this. It's like, I make the crazy suggestions to them. So you don't want me to ask, but it's like, email them because they really do listen. And again, this is one of those response things, is this would not necessarily have been in a release thing had there not been people raising their hand saying, hey, I'd like to have,
Joe brings up a great question. He says, will the undecorated locomotives be assembled, or will they be a full parts of bags to assemble? So they will be assembled. The core unit will be assembled. There are some detail parts that will need to be added by you, the modeler. But for the most part, they are assembled. So you're not going to just get a kit. It will just be an undecorated locomotive. And you'll have to add some of those smaller details that would normally be applied if it was a decorated model. But that's a good question.
I've wondered on those because, the lenses for the headlights, the number boards, the windshields, because again, to facilitate painting, and I've had guys explain to me how they get around that at times. In fact, SP is one of the roads guys like to buy because it's to mask out and paint it something else.
Mm-hmm.
So I know it can be done, but I assume again, some of that will be in the box, not assembled, so that you'll put some of that on to maybe make it easier to paint and mask.
And with that said, why don't you go ahead, Tony, and show us? You had some great shots of the prototype.
I did find a good group of these. This is the Bessemer and Lake Erie group. And as I say, I think it's like 900 to 910 or 901 to 910. These are all XSPS and Cotton Belt units. This is from 2000. This is Butler, Pennsylvania, and there's 3 of them. That's brand new painted, and unfortunately I don't have, it's in St. Louis, and there is a couple of places that do work, and it's coupled up to another unit, so I assume these are being delivered, that they would have just gotten it from the SP. This caught my eye, the orange down here, and I thought, I wonder if Athearn caught that, and when I went and looked at your illustration, you guys did. It's like, oh, cool, wow. But I had never realized that these were painted that way. But this was in the St. Louis area. Daniel Schroeder shot this, and I assume it just came out of a paint shop there. Wow, that's a nice shot. 2004, yeah. A little better weather for you there again in Pennsylvania.
Now we are getting some questions on these. If you look carefully on the nose, the Bessemer had that inset nose sand patch, and folks are asking, will the Athearn model have that? Now, because it is an Athearn model, it's not going to be a detail that we're going to have on those. That's more of a Genesis type detail. So I just want to let you guys know. I see some people asking on social media, and it looks like we had somebody ask that. Claire was asking if that was the case. These will not have that inset, just to let you know.
But I think you do have ditch lights.
We do have
ditch lights. Yeah, ditch lights are on there. That always tends to be oh man, I wish they would have. And this run does have ditch lights for any that's appropriate. It's like those UP repaints, and I think those speed letter SPs. But yeah, that's an odd, interesting feature because that cap's usually up here.
Right.
They did that on purpose just to annoy you, Jim. It's like, boy, if
I think
Athearn
they
ever
did.
makes a model of this is gonna. I think at times that's how this stuff gets done. And here's another new one. This is 1999. Says in North Platte, Nebraska. So I baffled on that. If anybody knows why this fresh unit got to run out to one of the awesome UP towns out in western Nebraska, but wow, yeah, that again, unless it was coming maybe from they were rebuilt or some were redone at MK in Idaho,
Okay.
maybe it would have come down. I don't know, but yeah, that's a neat,
That's
another neat
super
shot
fresh.
there. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And Bessemer has a really neat, I think Bessemer might be the one I saw virtually about every kind of SD38. They've got straight 38s, they have 38 ACs, they have 38-2s in SDs. So, wow, I don't, for a kind of a small road and a fairly obscure version of, EMD's second generation power, it's like, what road owns SD38, SD38 AC, and SD38-2s? Like, I don't know that anybody did, because if they bought them, they probably just bought one, but bam, I think they have them all. And then I think that's either 9 or 18 that they had some early power and F unit as well. Is that cool? That's the one I put up today on Facebook saying we were going to be on tonight. Look at the railway in with a big tunnel motor rolling
neat.
by.
That's just
awesome.
begging to be modeled.
Yeah, again, this is a shot of, oh yeah, I got to do that. That's very cool. And I noticed some of these, and this has got like I don't think they're reflector things. It's kind of a hash or, visibility thing over this. But if you notice, that one has it the whole way and it's fresh. And I forget on your illustrations which way it is. So it makes you wonder when that was done. You can see here the like safety white thing there for the step. And it's either not, it's not there on that one. Again, repaints, even the stuff coming out of the factory at different orders, stuff can go this way and that. But you never know.
Neat.
Nice overhead shot, and look at I would assume that's like a anti-skid, kind of that whatever stuff rolled out on the nose. And I thought was a cool shot. That's Superior, Wisconsin, 2006, and would have been, it's on a Canadian National train, and that's where it ends up. I think that's how CN ends up with the Bessemer tunnel motors. Is CN in 2004 acquires Bessemer, and it gets folded into them. So that's how it'd be over in Wisconsin, because we'll see their map in a minute. And again, as I go through these, I always find things like, well, if they're doing this, I'm going to bug Janik and the guys to see about doing that bay window and capping over, you'll put those little plates in the windows on some of those. Like, well, I don't know if you guys have ever done that. That's cool. And I love this, the coil coach. That this is in St. Louis in 1977, Ed Hawkins, and everybody knows his name. He did the softcover railway prototype cyclopedias that are just a wonderful set of reference books. And this is a picture of his from the St. Louis area, but I was thinking of the old 50-foot, and in the regular line, it doesn't have to be exact, because this has got a straight sill, and that coil-like roof is not the same as the roof you've got for yours, but that old blue box fish belly 50-foot covered gondola would be a neat model done in this Bessemer and Lake Erie with the coil coach thing. So I was going to send that to Janik as well. And then this is up on, this again was my confusion at first thinking on Bessemer. There is a Duluth, Mesabi, and Iron Range unit last there in that consist. There's one of the 45T-2s repainted into CN, and then one of Bessemer's SD38s in between, and then that's on those tremendous, the wonderful Walther's Cornerstone ore dock that you basically need a room all for itself to set it up with the barge. But how cool would that be?
Oh my gosh!
And then there's your little roundhouse ore jenny is what the trains are made up of.
Oh, that's neat.
And then here again, as Bessemer, this is again you got. That's the corner of Pennsylvania, Lake Erie at the top. And so Ohio is just over on the left side. But that is the railroad basically running, from Erie up there on Lake Erie down to Bessemer. And that's what they were. And I think these other shots, I do have some more Getting into UP, here's some others I found. And again, these are things I think of, and I'll bet you these are all gone from the roster by now.
Right.
But this is a Mark Hall shot, so I'm guessing this is around the Kansas City area sometime. But it's interesting because you think these are, I'm sure that's still on the UP, and some of them they do get, turned into. We see some of this power in Kansas City, and like the Fairfax district will be SD40s. I can't remember the last time we've seen a tunnel motor. I think they're pretty much gone. But again, you think of these as being around all the time, and some of this is older than you'd expect. This is a southbound in the Kansas City area. This is my buddy Mel Wilson, who works up in the iron ore stuff, did this picture. This is August of 2001, and there's a UP repaint with SP. And then there's a nice shot. Look at that.
Yeah.
And I was looking at that, and I think you guys have basically done, I think you could almost put this together, because I think you've done a GATX SD40-2, that whole consist has been done in the last however many years. You could build that almost out of Athearn stuff. It's like, wow, that's cool. And again, this is the level that you guys are doing with all the capped over different pieces. This is in California in 1999.
Oh, wow.
And that's Neff Yard, which is on the east side of Kansas City. That was the old Mopac yard. And this is a 1999 shot, so fairly new repaint of it. But, sleek looking. I again, between that red sill to the yellow sill, doesn't seem like it was that long ago. Right. And as you say, that's mid-2000s. It's like, wow, that's going on. Wow, that's almost 20 years ago now.
20 now, yeah.
So again, I think of these things as, I'd probably go find this today. It's like, no, probably not. It's like, oh, wow, yeah, I guess not. But those are some of the extra shots I came up with on my last run up to go through the slides. But yeah, it's neat stuff. And again, on those Bessemers, that's where the CNs come from, is their ex Bessemer and Lake Erie. And now you had mentioned, wait, let me see if I do have that one. Yeah, here it is. Well, no, I'm saying that wrong. Let's look at this again. Here is, you mentioned that there is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so no, I thought, I'm pretty sure that Bessemer is acquired by CN. Maybe they took Mesabi as well, because that would be Duluth, Mesabi, and Iron Range. And that's a Mesabi 45T-2, which again, they didn't buy, so that had to have come from SP as well. So yeah, what you guys are doing are not ex-Bessemer necessarily, I guess. They're the DMIRs, and you're going to include that reporting mark, you say, in the release. And that's August 2007.
Neat.
Very neat.
Well, at the beginning of the show, I said, N-Scale guys, stick around. We've got some exciting news for you. And I also invited your partner in crime, Shane, but he's a busy man right now. He's got a lot of things going on.
I get pictures every day. Shane got married. He and Brooke got married this summer, and they found a house, and they bought their first house, and they're taking possession of it this month. And he's been reading every morning. I basically have pictures over coffee of, here's the hardwood floors, here's this bedroom painted, we're doing this, doing that. I mean, they're working like crazy on this new house. So yeah, unfortunately, they're trying to get it done so they can spend their first Christmas there which will be next week. So yeah, he wasn't able to make it tonight. But yeah, he's my N-Scale guy. Yeah.
He is he's been doing N-Scale forever, I guess, and he's a really talented N-Scale modeler. Done some really neat stuff. You can check out a lot of his reviews in Model Railroad News, and he's also done some other articles besides reviews. But I'm sure he's going to be excited about what we're showing. As you know, in the last year, we did a rebranding, and we started to introduce some of our N-Scale models in the Genesis line, which means they're going to have details that have never been seen before in the Athearn line for N-Scale. Now, the first one that I'm going to show you is the F89F trailer on flat car. Now, we have offered this in the past. This is one of the later releases. But what we're adding to this model now, since it is Genesis, is a lot of the brake detail is going to be there. All of the deck detail is going to be there. And the biggest thing that it still kind of boggles my mind, Tony, even as an N-scaler, we're going to put cut levers and air hoses on these cars.
Nice. Very nice.
Now, of course, they're going to have metal wheel sets. They're going to have body-mounted couplers. The other neat thing is If you're not familiar with these, we offer them with the hitches extended, like you see in this picture. We also have the hitches flat for transport as a bare table, as they say. So you've got a lot of details in this car. And for this run, for its initial Genesis run, we're offering a couple. Here's a Kansas City Southern car. This is more of a 1980s era. And you knew there was going to be an SP.
Yeah.
And for you guys that are modeling, this is more of the 1970s. A lot of the trailer train, when they started all the way back into the 50s. Their corporate scheme, if you will, was this brown. It was kind of an oxide brown. They kept that all throughout the 70s. And so we're offering the trailer train in both the brown, and we're also offering it in the more familiar from 1980s on trailer train yellow. So again, these are going to have some great features that we've not offered on these cars before. We're going to be throwing all kinds of neat stuff in there, not just the cut levers and the air hoses. The bodies, the actual chassis are die-cast metal because you want to have that weight close to the rails, nice center of gravity. And they're great, really, for the guys that like to run the Fremo in. You've seen them set up out at Spring Creek when they have their open house.
Yeah.
These are perfect for that. But believe it or not, you can run these on a 9 3/4 radius, which is amazing to me. They really look better on a 12-inch or bigger. But if you really want to run them on a 9 3/4, you can if you want. But this is going to have separately applied brake, ratchet, wire grab irons, ladders, detailed deck, the die-cast body, and again, the newly tooled details such as the rubber train line hoses and the cut levers. So a really, really nicely detailed car in N scale, usually features found in HO.
Very, very nice. And this for the HO folks that might, there's a run of this in HO as well. And then what that new trailer what we're going to talk about in a second, is coming in both. So all this stuff you're seeing will have both HO and N releases, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and they're, you can get, like Tony said, in the N scale and the HO scale, you can get them just the flat cars by themselves, or you can get them with a 45-foot trailer. Now, in the HO world, we've had the 45-foot trailer for a while, but N scale guys have been asking for the Fruehauf 45-foot trailer for a number of years, actually. And now we are happy to say that this is all brand new tooling. It has not been offered before. Let me see if I can get some artwork up here for you guys and show you what our initial run of these trailers are going to be. Now, Tony, you and I both share automotive background interests as well. So, a little background on these 45-foot trailers. Before the 1970s, trailers were really limited by the Interstate Commerce Committee. They didn't want trailers any longer than about 45 feet. And that's why, if you're old enough to remember the old cab over tractor trailers, you don't really see those anymore. That was an attempt that they could actually start using these 45-foot trailers and maximize the load. And that's where the 45-foot trailer really started to see its prime, about the mid-70s. But they lasted well into the 90s. And so for you guys that are modeling the 1980s, 1990s in N scale, you're definitely going to want to add these to your collection. Let's get this up, because I think the first one that we're offering is a Burlington Northern.
Yeah, I remember those 45s really hit after like the Staggers Act in 1980. Once that some of the deregulation, that 45 trailers were then on piggyback trains all the time.
Yeah, it's amazing to me to see, how the advancements in trailers since the Staggers Act. We went from 45 to 48 and then 53, 20, 25 years ago when I first came out to Illinois, and the first time I saw a 53-foot reefer, I thought it was a monster. And now they're talking, I think they're in Texas, they're testing a 60-foot trailer.
I've seen pictures of that, and I almost can't believe it. Yeah, I remember, I think I saw one of those one morning and shared it with my assistant editor Shane. I said, "Is this real or is this photoshopped?" He said, "I'm thinking it might be real. I think I've heard of that." I'm like, "Well, I don't know." And now I think on this trailer, did I read, is it the N or the HO or both? There's like beaded side. There's a couple of different bodies that you're doing as well.
Yeah, this is, like I was saying, this is all new tooling. First time in N scale. There's a couple of different things that we're doing. There's going to be 2 rear door styles. So there's the 2 latch and the 4 latch. We're also going to be doing separately applied mud flaps. The bogies are going to be positionable, which is a really cool feature. The other thing that's kind of neat is the landing gear crank is actually wire, because that's the only way you're really going to do it in N scale to make it look convincing. If you were to do it in plastic, it would just be way too thick. It would just look off.
Yeah.
But they're going to have a wire landing gear crank. And what's really cool about this era of trailer is, depending on which prototype we choose, it's going to have a wheeled or a shoe style landing gear, again, based on the prototype. And yeah, you're absolutely right. We're going to be offering in future runs the rib side, which were more common probably in the 70s and early 80s. These are more of the more common riveted style.
And of course, I hadn't caught that on the landing gear. Like, that's a shoe version. And then there's the ones that have like the little, as you say, the wheel, the little
wheels. Yeah.
I hadn't caught that either
wheels
in the stuff. Neat. Wow.
So of course we've got the Burlington Northern. I remember seeing these outside of Rochelle. They were still using these, I think, into the 90s. But these will be perfect for those F89F TOFCs that we're offering as well. And the nice thing is we're offering the trailers by themselves. So if your layout doesn't have room for that type of freight car, you can add these to your industrial park, your highways, or any type of pickup and receiving type areas.
Nice to see this, coming to the N scale line as well, because it's a nice trailer.
It's a lot of requests that we've got on these. We're seeing a lot of requests for vehicles that are in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Speaking of the 70s, here's the Clipper Express. Obviously a paint scheme that goes back to the mid 70s. And you'll take a look here, and this is N scale. We're going to have all this printing on the mud flaps.
That's very nice. That really makes these really stand out. We talked about early on in the show, the night and day difference between old and new products. And these trailers are perfect examples. In the past, this would be a molded silver body with clippers stamped in red, and that's it.
Right.
And now you've got where, like, you'll have the different silver highlights on the door rails, the reflectors, the red for the back brake lights, the printing on the mud flaps, stuff you'd never even think about. And you look at these and they seem so incredibly intricate. And in some cases, they might be old blue box tooling piggybacks, but done up like that, I would tell you, oh no, that's got to be a new model. And it's like, no, It's just when you put all this extra paint and detail on it, it's amazing how much different they look. So yeah, these will be fantastic. And wow, even an N scale, that'll be a magnifying glass. So if I'm going to see that, I think.
Yeah, we'll have to get Shane to review some of these, because he's younger than us and he can see a lot of these.
He would see all this stuff easier than me. Yeah.
Transamerica, remember these?
Oh yeah, yep.
These are neat. These are more into the 90s era. And then last, the Extra. I remember seeing the Extra lease trailers all over the country. And so, yeah, a lot of new, this is all brand new tooling. A lot of N-scale guys have been wanting these 45-foot trailers for a number of years. Your day has finally come in. And like I said, you can pre-order these up until Friday, December 30th, and pre-order through your favorite dealer. And they will be out probably about this time next year.
That was the other odd thing. The first time I start typing the next, like, I think a couple of these are January 2024 delivery. And as I was putting that in from Aurora News in the news announcements, it's like, wow, 24. It's like, it's a year from now, but it does seem like a long, but no, a year from now.
So far, everything that we've talked about tonight too is pre-orders. And, I'm thinking, it's probably not too late for us to drop some not so subtle hints to our family members or our friends that there's still time for them to go down to the hobby shop and pick up, I don't know, a new freight car, new locomotive. Or, Tony, if you're like me, you just go ahead and go Christmas shopping for yourself once you've taken care of everybody else on your gift list.
Absolutely.
I wanted to share with you guys tonight. We have got some stuff that's in stock at your dealer right now. We've got a good selection of freight cars and locomotives. And Tony, I'm thinking you're probably going to want to do some reviews on at least one or two of these things if you haven't already. So the first up on the list, I've already got three of these. These are the Seco box cars, but they're a Genesis model, so they've got full brake details. They've got all of the cut levers, the air hoses. They're just full on detail. They're absolutely great running cars. Now, of course, they came out with Boston and Maine, so I ordered all three. This one that you see here, this is a Prime for Grime version, and these are available at your dealer right now. Tony, you've probably reviewed the Secos in the past, haven't you?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I remember the first group, and yeah, I haven't seen this latest group yet. But yeah, it's a wonderful car, nicely done. Kind of that typical IPD, the incentive per diem era boxcar in Hutchinson Northern. This is a patched one as a secondary owner, but yeah, that typical of that 70s, early 80s era.
And these are the perfect types of cars if maybe you're not in a club, so you don't go to a club layout. Maybe you just have like what I'm working on behind me, just a small, simple switching layout. The money that you save in space and material and everything else, you can have a really nicely detailed small layout and pick up a few of these, and they just look so much better, especially if you build your track at a slightly higher level than your standard layout, because then you get to appreciate all that brake detail that they put on these freight cars. Now, here's one of my favorites. I know it's one of your favorites as well. The GP7s are in stock, although they are going quickly. I know in our distribution center, we're starting to run out. Myself, personally, I picked up all of the Bangor and Aroostook, including the Bicentennial version. This is the KO and G. These guys are going fast, but there's still some available at your hobby shop. Any of these things...
That's a rare duck road name for you guys.
Oh, it's very, yeah.
When this was announced, I remember us talking about it, saying, wow, I got to think if that's ever had, a regular commercial release before. I think we maybe pinned a 40-foot boxcar way back in the day was done for KO and G. But as far as a locomotive, wow, that's interesting.
It really is. And any of these right now that you see, like I said, you can get these through your dealer. If your dealer doesn't have them, your dealer can talk to their Horizon sales rep and get these for you. But like I said, they are going quickly. I think we're already starting to sell out of the Bangor and Aroostook models. So if you're looking for a GP7, this is a good time for you to get one of these just in time for Christmas. Maybe, though, you're not into the earlier generation diesels. Maybe you need something a little bit newer. Remember these? The SD90s. This one here is the Prime for Grime Norfolk Southern, former Union Pacific. This was another highly anticipated model. And of course, this has got a lot of features that your standard Genesis doesn't have. So this is going to have the ground lights. This is going to have the operating number boards. All of those lighting features that are now becoming slowly more standard. Of course, the ditch lights, the headlights, and it's all LED. And the cool thing that I like about this one, Tony, it's kind of subtle. If I zoom in, did you notice the chipped and scratched paint?
I was about to ask on that. That was this patched or Prime for Grime, and it is Prime for Grime.
Prime for Grime, yeah. Norfolk Southern, and you can see where they painted over the UP.
Yeah.
So for you guys that are, modeling Norfolk Southern in the mid 2000s, this is a neat model to add, and it's definitely a conversation piece. And once again, Prime for Grime, you can see a lot of the hard work is done for you.
That is very neat. Yeah, I kind of, you see these in the illustrations, but until you see the model on the Prime for Grimes, it's really hard to appreciate how awesome they are. And that is neatly done.
It is really cool. A lot of folks really like the Prime for Grime, myself included, because it gives a real world look of our locomotives and our freight cars. Speaking of freight cars, we still got a few of these. You guys that are modeling 1970s, 1980s, and even into the 1990s, three packs and singles of the uh, what is currently ready to roll, which will be Athearn soon. These are the PS 4740 covered hoppers. These are in stock too. And remember, Tony, we were talking about Fremo earlier. Fremo guys really love these because I know here in Illinois we have a Fremo set up twice a year, and it's all operations. And there's a lot of covered hoppers in that operation.
No, it's a great way to get them. I think what in this month's announcement, you've got I think coal hoppers in packs as well. So yeah,
Right.
those are nice. The three packs, and the box cars you did recently. I remember buying that Katie set that had the green Katie 40-foots, had the one odd paint, and
That's
then I
right.
think in the singles you did red. So I ended up getting like 4 different Katie box cars by buying that 3-pack, the single. There was a lot of neat. That was the set that had that. What was it was the Vermont one that switches that Ethan Allen furniture plant. I remember buying that green box car.
Mhm.
We talked about it. That was a neat
One of
set.
the
So sometimes in these sets you need to look to see that it's not just like these are all just early 70s NW, but there will be some different things. Like that one Katie set had a box car you couldn't get any other way.
Yeah, that's a good point, Tony, because a lot of these, well, all of these actually, you can buy these as singles. The singles are usually their own road numbers. And then if you buy the 3-pack, they may be the same road, but they're going to be all different road numbers. So it's much easier to build your fleet. You can see in this picture here, all 3 are different road numbers. And like you said, even in this latest, what's in the stock, I think it's the DT&I. Yeah, the DT&I covered hoppers that we're selling in a 3-pack. We're selling them as singles in a 3-pack, and one of them is a distinct paint scheme that's not offered outside of the 3-pack. So not only do you get a savings in the price by buying the 3-pack, but you also get a unique car. So it's a good point.
That's very cool. Yeah, fun to see those. That's what made me buy that Katie set. Was it's like, oh look, that one car's different. I didn't realize that, and then had to have it.
Here's one that I think we showed these off at the St. Louis prototype meet, but this is the CSX SD60Ms. These are in stock as well. And CSX, this one here in particular, Tony, I don't know if you're a fan of the Dark Future CSX, but these are going quickly.
I like that. I like that look. I think it's a nice throwback to the like 60 C&O B&O because of that the blue, the yellow. That
Yeah.
I do like that lettering scheme. Yeah.
So here are some Genesis ACFs that are in stock as well. I always like this Grand Trunk
Hmm.
paint scheme. Simple but really cool.
These are the
These
new
cars
the
are
40,
Genesis.
4600s, and I was going to ask you, are both because our Justin Sobek, who reviews for me, is doing I think GM&O and a couple others, and he sent me some pictures already on the N scale. Are the
Mhm.
N and O both Genesis in this 4600?
So in this run here, these are available in stores now. The HO scale is Genesis, and you can kind of tell. I can zoom in on some of this detail. You've got all of this brake hoses and piping. This is Genesis. Now on the N scale, it's going to be standard Athearn N scale. But that being said, they're still going to have nice metal etched roof walks. They're still going to have some separate detail. Really nicely done models in N scale. The HO scale and the N scale of the roads that we just talked about, they're all available at your dealer now.
And yeah, I hadn't realized the GM&O was out, and he sent me the picture saying, "I've got these. I'm doing, working on the review." I'm like, "Oh wow, cool! I didn't know those were out." And I said, "Man, you bought GM&O, but you didn't buy me an HO one." So I don't think it was bought for me. But anyhow, so I guess I got to go buy myself one. Yeah.
You might have to, yeah.
I
You might
guess
have
I
to.
will. There you go.
Here's one that I'm sure that I remember you and I talking about these when we announced them
Yeah.
last year, and this is a cool former Wabash unit, Norfolk and Western F7s, and this was a paint scheme. Most of them, Tony, if my memory is correct, most of these just ended up in the Pelver blue, but there was a few of them they just kind of did. They left the Wabash gray on there and
Yeah,
just
the top part and kind of redid them. This was, in
yeah.
fact, this was the first edition of Diesel Era that I did for White River. Athearn was working on these, and we were pulling pictures and things for research that I was sharing with you. And yeah, and this run, I was just talking about this run with my dad this past week, saying, man, I don't know what I've run down on these. I know I reviewed one of these that you loaned me from the St. Louis RPM, the Mopac, and I think one of the versions of these you had early, and I took it with me and did a review and gave it back to you. But I still need to. I think you did black with the hamburger logo,
We
Pevler
did, yeah.
blue. I mean, virtually every one of those releases is something vaguely different. Like this is that kind of patched over Wabash tricolor, but then there's also black. There's a solid blue. That it's a really neat group of these F units that the N&W never owned F units, but they inherited them from Wabash, and a lot of them worked up in Canada.
Yeah, really neat model. Some neat details on these too. I was zoom in. You can see on this by there they had started cutting away on the skirt. The skirt used to run the full length, and for maintenance reasons, they removed a lot of that. And the Genesis model, of course, captures that. And of course, the one thing I haven't mentioned either is you can get these Genesis models at your dealer, either standard DC. So if you still run DC, you can run a standard DC, or if you want to use your own decoder, you can certainly do that as well. Or you can get the Soundtrax decoder, and that comes with Tsunami 2 sound, which I'm a big fan of that Tsunami 2. It really makes my operating sessions that much interesting.
This F unit, since it came out, now going on 25 years ago, set a standard, and both its operation, its looks, and then the degree that it's gone to now of like, my gosh, this version with MU receptacles up there by the headlights. It's got the passenger type plow. It's got the extra grab irons, the oil cooler, the skirting's cut away, the winterization hatch, the skate antenna. I mean, this is not a stock F unit by any stretch. These are beautiful models. And yeah, the sound and operation of them matches it. Look at the little cab shade there. I mean, this is definitely a late era F unit, because this would have been N&W. They would have gotten these in 64. October 64 is the merger for nickel plate Wabash and Norfolk and Western. And these make it to, I think, like the latest picture I found was about 1980 for one of them. But they're amazing models. These late era F units, as pretty as like a fresh Santa Fe war bonnet as delivered is. These are so intricate with all the things that got done to them over the years that I find these even more appealing when I see models of them than just the straight, beautiful as delivered paint jobs without all the extra things modified over their life. But yeah, these are incredible.
Absolutely.
I hadn't realized,
So
these again. These seem like they've been out a while, because again, I stole that one from you at the St. Louis RPM in July to review it with the Mopac, and I think I had it like in September, October's Model Road News. So yeah, I tend to forget that they did just land recently. But yeah, this is really, I think, was Mopac. I can't figure what else was in the group, but there were several of these kind of late era F units, and boy, they are neat models just for the odd detail that we never had before on F units. That F unit was an F unit, and now it's like, wow, look at all that.
Yeah, definitely. So if you're a fan of the 60s and 70s era when these still roamed the rails, and that picture you're talking about, Tony, I think that was in the White River calendar. I think that was in October or November.
Yes, yeah, I think that does end up. Yeah, that got used again for the one, but yeah, that it's a really neat group that they ran on. The Wabash had that leg across from like Windsor that ran through Ontario to kind of connect with Buffalo. It was basically a bridge for them that they went up through Canada, and they had power that was kind of Canadian. In fact, some of those were, I think, GMD Jeeps or F units that Wabash had. But it's a really interesting group, and that's, if you look again, shop.whiteriverproductions.com, look at back issues of Diesel Era, and it's, I think, second quarter of 21 was that issue, and it's got a whole color feature on these F units, and it's a fun group.
It really is. And then I think I got some more for you. Yeah, some more what I would consider modern, but I guess I guess some guys consider this almost legacy equipment now. This is the Dash 9s. We've got some Dash 9s, especially Southern Pacific in stock. The Dash 9, that was a locomotive that we announced a couple of years ago and really set the bar for our Genesis models. I mean, the amount of detail and road-specific detail on these Dash 9s is almost mind-boggling. The amount of work the developers had to do to make each and every single model. And, one of the dangers, I fall into it, I don't know about you, Tony, but I'm more of a fan of the first and second generation models. I look at, Dash 9s, AC4400s is rather generic, but that's really a trap. That's really not true. These things are so road specific that in some ways they're not generic at all.
And again, this is a Genesis model, as you stated, but I would fall into that same thing of, there was a blue box, and it still, I think, exists in, your next line down from Genesis, that again, it's kind of more of a one size fits all. And I think that kind of helped cloud back in the day when these were new and that model was current or a new model, that it's the same thing, and they're anything but, from like the steps there on the pilots to I mean, when these come out, I'm always baffled at reading all that's like, oh wow, I guess I didn't realize that everybody ordered something a little bit different on them. So they are nowhere near the same. So a Genesis model, I know when it was announced, that people say, why aren't they doing that when they've got the one model and it's a good model? It's like, but it can't go into all the road specific things, and it's amazing the variations to them. But it's a beautiful piece.
Yeah, it really is. I really had a newfound appreciation for the Dash 9 when we first got our samples in about a year ago. And, again, it's not really my wheelhouse for what I model, but absolutely beautiful locomotive. And, quite honestly, the sound in these is so cool, because when I first moved to Illinois 25 years ago, the Dash 9s are relatively new. So I did a lot of rail fanning with the BNSF. And it was taking me back to that time of rail fanning an early BNSF when they had these Dash 9s. The sound is just amazing on these. And once again, these are available in stock at your hobby dealer. If for some reason the road you're looking for isn't available with your dealer, have your dealer contact their sales rep. There's a possibility we might still have a few of these left for you. And you know what? You got time to get it before Christmas.
Just barely running out.
Just barely.
Yeah.
Exactly. So for you guys out there that maybe have a club get together for the holidays, there's some ideas for you. You can also look at our website, athearn.com, and see what's available as well. And boy, it seems hard to believe, but we're just a few days really before Christmas is here.
I was talking about that earlier today. I said, well, Christmas is next week, and the person I was talking to was like, oh, well, no, wait a minute. It's like, I think it's like Saturday or Sunday. Like that is, that's within a week, because we're almost at the weekend. So it's like, it's amazing how quickly it's gotten here this year, it seems.
Well, that's cool. I've got time for one or two questions, and then we're gonna wrap it up for the night. Tony, you got time for one or two questions?
Absolutely, yeah.
All right. There's one that I see here that I'd like to answer. It's moving quickly. I'm going to grab it. He says, sorry to be that guy, but I have to ask, how come the Surfliners got delayed again? I'm really excited to get the 10 cars I ordered. I'm hoping it's because of high demand. So that's a good question, and don't worry about being that guy. It's a valid question. So these are all new cars. They're brand new cars. And as our developer crew started working on these cars, they saw some ways to refine them. There's going to be some refinements that we did not advertise. We're going to leave that as a neat little Easter egg for you guys to find out when you get the models themselves. But our developers are modelers as well. We've had John on the programs in the past, and we've had Janik on the program in the past. Both of these guys are hardcore modelers. So they look at things a little bit differently than your standard engineer. And there's some things that they saw that would work better in a real world modeling situation that they wanted to refine. And of course, that's going to take some time. So that did create a little bit of a delay, but trust me, they are coming. I've seen some test shots that I haven't shared with you guys yet. I'm really excited about them. And again, it's a car that, I really would have no business modeling, but the amount of detail in these cars is just amazing. And Tony, I'm sure you saw some of the first shots at the RPM this past summer.
They're very, very, very nice. And I know the in-scale guys have begged and pleaded on them too. So, yeah, it's a popular car. So it's interesting, exciting to hear on the refinement stuff. That's nice
Absolutely.
news. Yeah.
JD Boyd has a general question for Athearn. He says, Jim, could you let us know what Janik and John and you do for Athearn and the roles you have at Athearn? Well, that's a good question. So starting with John is our lead developer. The AC4400s that we've announced, that is his project. He is the guy that does the boots on the ground research, spends a lot of time doing a lot of the research, and then he does the actual CAD drawing. He sends all of that information to our factory, and they come models. They send those models back to John, and John has a very great attention for detail. He checks those models out to make sure they're exactly what he's designed. Once they're up to his specs, they go into production, and then they're made. So John is pretty much our go-to guy for new tooling, new ideas. And those emails that you send to the product, Athearn product suggestion, well, they go right to John. John is one of our guys that basically is the leading edge, if you will, of Athearn. So whenever you send a new model idea or a road name on a existing platform, he's the guy that's going to get that email. Now going to Janik plays a very important role here at Athearn. Janik not only helps John with the product development, but he works on a lot of the existing tooling and a lot of the existing models. His job is heavily trenched in research. So the SD45T-2s that we talked about and the SW1500s, he and his team of guys, they did all of the research on those. They're the ones that are responsible to make sure they have the right colors, the right markings, the right details. That all falls on Janik and his team. And without John and Janik, we frankly wouldn't have an Athearn. Myself, what do? I'm the marketing manager of Athearn. So if you see our social media feeds, our live feeds like we're talking about tonight, magazine ads, things of that nature, that's on me. I'm pretty much the guy that tells you about Athearn. So that's just a small scratch of the surface of what those Athearn employees do. Thank you for that question. Coming up in the next few months, we'll probably have some more videos with both John and Janik joining me and giving you some more behind the scenes, if you will.
It's always fun to see what those guys are working on. When I get an email from one of them, it's always exciting just, for the things they're after. Like we're trying to determine what is this or that, or do you have a picture of something? And so that's always kind of a fun surprise.
And, while we're talking about what everybody does, Tony, for anybody that missed it, give us a background of what you do at White River Productions.
I've been the editor of Model Railroad News, which is White River Productions all-scale monthly, 100 color pages of new products, information, and reviews. And I've been doing that since 2011, I think. And then I'm the managing editor for Diesel Era, a quarterly publication that stakes out like a couple of different prototypes with each issue and goes through railroads and who owned what and pictures. And Diesel Era was started by Paul Withers, and White River took it over in the last year or so, and I put it together for them now. And then HO Collector has been around for about 7 years, and it's another quarterly. and it is dedicated to old vintage HO model trains and their history.
And Tony, you've been a lifelong rail enthusiast too, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Real trains and model trains. Yeah. From time I could walk.
Well, I want to thank everybody for hanging out with us tonight. We went a little bit at the 2-hour mark, so I want to thank everybody for
It
joining
never
us
seems
tonight.
like it when we get, I don't know. It's like we start talking and we're talking train stuff, and I would tell you, oh, we probably talked half hour, 45 minutes. And yeah, then
Right.
we get to this point and you go, well, it's been about 2 hours. And I think, did I get up and leave for a while? Did I miss something? Like, was it really? Wow. Okay.
It's the thing about the Athearn Extra, it's kind of like hanging out at the club meetings. We're talking about new models, we're talking about old models, we're looking at slideshows. Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and it does go quick when we're talking trains. So
Neat stuff.
Tony, I want to thank you for coming on board with us
Oh, I
tonight, sharing those great prototype images.
always happy to do that. Love talking about the real trains and how they become the model trains. So yeah, I love doing that stuff. And I hope you and your family have a great Christmas, because that's right around the corner.
Yeah, you too. One last question. Anthony's been pretty persistent with this question. He says, Tony and Jim, do you guys rail fan the Northeast Corridor?
I know Jim's answer. I'm sure he has.
Little bit, not as much as some of the
you
more
used to,
interesting
yeah.
stuff in Maine and Vermont, but a little bit.
I only have once, when I did the Amherst show in 2016, and I spent most of a week kind of seeing some of the areas that I hadn't. But no, I'm mostly Midwest, Kansas City, St. Louis, Texas, like Colorado. Those are kind of my stomping grounds for train stuff.
All right. Well, with that, again, want to thank everybody for joining us here tonight on the Athearn Extra. Probably the last one of the year. Hard to believe we're going into 23 in just a few weeks. But I want everybody out there to have a happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and be happy, be healthy, be safe, do some good modeling. And you know what comes next, right, Tony?
High
High
greens.
greens, everyone. Thank you. Take care.
Thanks.